How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Shawn and Matt Show. My name is Matt, that is Shawn, and welcome to our show, Shawn. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about the most expensive house in the United States. $500 million has defaulted on their loan. We're going to be talking about 6 luxury amenities that buyers want and how hurricanes and storms like Ida are affecting the real estate market now and in the future. Shawn, Thursday, September 9th. How is your Thursday treating you?
Good. Got one under contract, settled another one, so things are moving. We're talking about flooding, and we've seen a lot of this flooding happening in weird areas, right? Like we've seen these hurricanes come through and flooding in New York City and, devastation. So really interested to talk about how this is going to change the real estate market, the new weather patterns.
So we'll get to that. Let's start with an article from CNBC. The most expensive home in America defaults on $165 million in debt, heads for sale. This is a Los Angeles mega mansion, once expected to hit the market for $500 million. It is known as The One. Shawn, I don't know how many times I can tell you I've watched a YouTube video of this property. Drone shots, Ferraris pulling up. There's like drool coming out of my mouth from just how epic and awesome the video is. And now they're having a little trouble paying back some debt. And it's not in foreclosure. It's in something called receivership, which is one step away from foreclosure. Basically, goes to the courthouse. They get assigned a person who then figures out how to get this sucker finished and how to sell it while trying to pay off as much debt as possible. Shawn, what are your thoughts when you heard that the most expensive house is close to foreclosure?
Yeah, the first thing I thought was like, all right, who owns this place? But then after reading some of the article, I was like, well, the property isn't even finished yet, right? So this guy has been building this property since 2014. So naturally, he's going to have a huge amount of debt. And he just keeps adding on and saying, oh, I want to do this, I want to do this, do this. And he's trying to attract these hugely luxury buyers. The people that have too much money, they don't know what to do with. But there's risk in doing that. And if you're taking 7 years to build a property that's over 100,000 square feet, you're narrowing your margins of who's going to purchase that. And secondly, you're spending all this money on advertising it and you're not even close to finished yet, So now you still have to get the permits to try to sell this thing. Listen, it's great to have, to try to do these kind of things. But at the same time, you've got to be grounded in your head a little bit to say, hey, maybe we got to finish this project a little quicker. Maybe we got to start coming up with these extravagant, crazy ideas as the years progress, as new trends happen. Just get it done and move on. And that's the problem. Is he could have done 3 houses by now and made the money, but I think it's ego driven, where it's like, I've got to build the one, and now it's coming back to bite him in the butt.
The developer is Nile, Niami, and he has stated that this house is his life mission. And to put in perspective, $500 million, here's what that gets you. 9 bedrooms, multiple kitchens, a nightclub, 4-lane bowling alley, salon, gym, 50-seat theater. Shawn, there's an entire paragraph of things like this. Underground garage with 50 cars, 2 auto turntables, 7 water features. The master bedroom suite is 4,000 square feet. Every door in the house is electric. And Niami also planned a jellyfish room and an ice bar, but lo and behold, both proved too costly.
And that's the problem.
So you draw the line at the jellyfish,
the jellyfish room.
The jellyfish room, too much.
Well, I think they were talking about walls made out of candy and like all this crazy stuff. And it's like, all right, very cool. I think if you look at a picture of this, overview of the house, it's so expansive. You see the mansions next to it that look like little ants, and that's the scale of this. And I can see as using it as, like they were saying, video shoots, using it in Hollywood, using it for that kind of thing. But who needs it? You're looking at how many buyers in the world, probably a fair amount, but I don't know. I just think that when people get some things in their head and they can't get them out of their heads and they just keep going and going and going, they find themselves in trouble, like he has. And like I said, I thought it was that somebody owned it and now they were trying to sell it. And here's another thing. The highest sale ever there was Bezos's home, right, for $100 and some million.
165.
And he's trying to get 4 times that amount, or 3.5, whatever, 3 times that amount for this house. That's ridiculous.
So your target market is the richest person in the world.
Exactly.
That is the market.
Bezos just bought it. So like now you got
so you
who
gotta
else?
go to the second richest.
Yeah.
You got maybe Elon Musk, but he's living out of like a shipping container right now. He sold all of his stuff.
Yeah, that's right. He's
We did that video on him.
And you think about how markets change over a year, let alone 7 years, right? And granted, we've seen increases in value, so that's probably working to his benefit. But I mean, this could all fall off a cliff tomorrow, and you're still holding this huge asset. So it's important. Like, listen, I'll speak from personal experience in flipping properties in my past, where we partnered up with somebody, and it was in DC, and it was a different market than we were used to. We did a lot of flips in Virginia, and then we went into DC, and the permitting process is different, the corruption is different. Like there's a lot of things that you got to learn, and we ended up holding this property too long. The construction took too long. The permitting process took too long. And in the end, guess what happened? 2008, market fall, bam. And now you're left holding a bag of a lot of money that you wish you still had. And so you got to get out of it. And I went through this process, and it wasn't a foreclosure process. It was talking to banks, talking to lawyers, trying to figure out how we're going to get out of this debt, then firing lawyers, talking directly to the banks. Ended up getting out of it, had to pay a lot of money. But it's a learning process, and it's anybody can go through it. And the key is get the job done, get it done quickly, move on, move forward, take your money and go, because things happen quickly.
Yeah, the article states that in about 2014, that's when the quote-unquote arms race for these mega mansions started really increasing in Beverly Hills, Bel Air, the Bird Streets, all those neighborhoods up there. And the article states that Niami had a house where he was marketing for $100 million, a spec mansion in Beverly Hills, ended up selling for $38 million. It also says that while this property was supposed to be listed for $500 million, that he had signed, allegedly, a listing agreement with Aaron Kerman of Compass and Rainey and Braden Williams of Williams & Williams Estates, who were planning on marketing the property for $288 million. So developers saying $500 million, listing agents saying $288 million, but what will really matter is what the, I keep wanting to say conservatorship,
yeah, me too.
like Britney Spears.
Yeah, exactly.
But what the receivership individual will list it at is anyone's guess.
Yeah, and a receivership is a little bit different. I never really heard of this. I thought, I've called them friendly foreclosures in the past, where you're in talks with the bank, and that's kind of what we did. We didn't go through the foreclosure process, thankfully. But a receivership is basically a third party kind of taking hold of the debt, who's owed, finding out what exactly is owed, and trying to sell it outside of the developer so that you can get rid of the debts and hopefully turn a profit. But a little bit different way of doing it. I think maybe a cleaner way of doing it, and not as bad on people's records, right?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. I mean, someone's going to get a deal. I mean, think about it this way. It's going to sell for, what, $100 million, $200 million? So is that really a deal? Because, in our market, we don't price things at $1 million thinking that they're going to sell for $500,000. But there are some markets where, yeah, let's price it at $75 million, knowing that it's only worth $44 million because we're going to get all that publicity. Yeah. So while they're towing the line of foreclosure, they still are going to sell it for a lot of money.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope they sell it for $200. He better hope they sell it for more than $170 million, right? I think he owes $160 million, and that's construction costs. That's videos. That's all the advertising that he's done, the schmoozing that he's done. I mean, like, that stuff adds up quickly.
A lot of sizzle reels.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to the next topic. This comes to us from inman.com. This is 6 luxury amenities buyers want now. Maybe we can find this in a house that doesn't cost $500 million.
Yeah.
How about that?
I hope so.
So the first one is health and wellness. By the way, if you're watching on YouTube, I will list and link all of these articles down below. Health and wellness. 2020 taught us that you got to have a gym. I think more emphasis is being placed on this, especially even for like rainy days. Like, no one wants to drive in traffic in the rain to go to the gym. So having a home gym is an absolutely necessary luxury amenity.
Absolutely. I think that now we've seen a change. We've seen a drastic change in real estate over the last year and a half. And so we've seen what people really want. Not only that, the millennial buyer is a different buyer. And I think they're more of a luxury kind of like, they want certain things, right? You're a millennial, you want certain things. You want the nice things, right? Like you were saying, like, millennials aren't going to buy a unit with no laundry in it, right? Like they want laundry in their unit, like things like that, right? And these are first-time buyers, but I think we are all seeing the change in what people really want. Home gyms are, I think, a must-have, and you don't need all the crazy stuff. A Peloton, which is great. I thinking about getting one. I thought about getting them for a long time, but I enjoy riding my bike, right? And in the winter, I'm not a cold person. Like, I'm not riding my bike in the cold. So thinking about that Peloton, and we're selling a house out on Exchange Street out in Ashburn, and they just put in this really nice gym, and they've got one of those things that hangs on the wall, and then the Peloton. And that's really all you need. But
yeah, I heard a quote. I don't know if it's a quote or if I just read something, but the quote said something like, you know, you don't want to be the guy that hobbles out of his Ferrari. You know, you don't want to like work so hard that, you know, a guy or girl that hobbles out of their Ferrari. You don't want to let your health go by the wayside because, you know, when you're sitting, you know, in bed, you can't outsource, you know, being healthy. So
yeah, health should be a
number
priority. One, absolutely.
Number 2 is luxury lifestyle connoisseurs. Think of someone who's into collecting, whether that's wine, cigars, cars, shoes, handbags, and more. Having a dedicated space, and you know, we all know about the man cave, but this is more of like, I guess, your grown-up action figures, or maybe action figures are coming back. It could still be action figures, but having a dedicated space for that is what the article says.
Yeah, I think that is coming back. I was actually watching a show last night with Jack Osborne. It's like paranormal stuff, and they were talking about a guy that had a doll room, and the guy's like, well, I just started collecting antique dolls, but it just so happens that some of them were haunted, if you believe.
Not creepy at all.
You know, totally creepy, man. Can you imagine walking into that room like, all right, thanks.
Number 3, Glitz and Glam. Why brave the elements and traffic, to take the words out of my mouth, to go to the beauty salon. I love this. You know, I'm not going to get my hair and makeup done all the time, but, you know, if I had like a barber chair in my basement or something, I'd be getting fresh cuts, fresh shaves all the time. And I can't imagine, you know, if I was a female or, you know, the female audience, imagine getting pampered in your own house. Maybe, you know, there is that, you know, ambiance, you know, go to the salon and see the familiar faces, but take it to the next level and have a party, you know, have some friends over and, you know, get your favorite salon to come to you.
It's just like everything else, you know. I mean, having the ability to go there or do it at your house, just like the gym, right? Having both kind of ideas at the same time. You know, I grew up with a salon in my basement.
No way.
Yeah.
I would have literally never guessed that.
No, it wasn't. It was mommy cutting my hair in the basement, unfinished basement, sitting on a like.
I was gonna say Pittsburgh in the 1980s.
We were total ghetto blue collar, man.
Yeah, you guys didn't have a salon. Number 4 is game time. Think bowling alley, pinball, video machines, pool tables.
Yeah.
I'm a fan of most of these. I'm not a huge fan of pool tables because I'm not good at pool. And I'm a sore loser.
Yeah.
But other than that, you know, knock yourself out.
Hey, pool tables can be cool, but man, they're so heavy and so big. And every time I sell a house with a pool table in it, they're like, that thing just stays. It conveys. They become an eyesore in the long run. And you know, my wife has talked to me about putting one or doing that, and I'm like, there's no way, because first of all, we'd have to put it on the top floor, which is a no-go. And secondly, you're not going to use it like you think and wish you would, right? I have a dartboard or like a electronic darts upstairs. I don't use it as much as I thought. One thing I am interested in is pinball. Like, pinball to me is absolutely addicting. And when I first moved here, we had a pinball machine, and I was on that a lot. But they're expensive. Did you ever price a pinball machine?
You can't say I have.
They're at least, I mean, the good ones, the decent ones, are at least $4,000. You're looking $4,000 to $7,000, and the newer ones are going to be like $6,500, $7,000 for a pinball game. Like,
wow.
It's insane, but man, they're addicting, and I'm definitely looking at adding some things to our game.
Yeah, you know, once you commit to like a pool table or, you know, a trampoline or a ping pong table, that's a fixture. That's really hard to move. I loved playing ping pong growing up. We had a ping pong table in our basement, and it's kind of like a rite of childhood ending when I had to take the thing apart and put it at the curb.
Well, the good thing about like a ping pong table is that it's light. It can fold up. You can store that in some ways. Whereas these big, heavy 1,000-pound tables, you can't do anything with. So
I do like the pinball machine. Throw it in the corner, and anyone is gonna. There's no barriers to entry. You just hit a button and
no, it's great.
Lights go off.
One other thing that you don't want is pianos. I mean, I have a house right now. There's a piano in the basement. They're like, we're leaving it. I guarantee the buyer's going to say, we don't want it. My sister, do you want this piano? No, I don't want the piano. So pianos are out, and there's so many other options for you. So don't buy.
They're just like crushing people's hobbies. Someone watching them loves playing the piano.
Well, I mean, hey, if you're going to play it often, that's one thing. But normally what people do is like, oh, my daughter's going to play piano, and then they play it a couple times, and then they go to the keyboard, and then they quit, right? So then you're stuck with this huge piano. Anyways.
Number 5 is room to roam. We've covered this, ample outdoor space. No need to cover it more. Number 6, life in the Luxe lane. So think automobiles, think garages, and it mentions subterranean garages, turntables. But even taking it back a bit, you're listing an Ashburn that has I don't know if you call it sport court, but whatever that material is, and they've completely tricked out their garage. I think that's an amazing amenity.
It's an epoxy floor, and I was actually looking online to see how epoxy floors are done, and could I do it myself? And my client actually tried to do it himself, and he's like, yeah, it came out okay, but doing it professionally is a huge difference. And if you see the video or the pictures on Exchange Street, you'll see this garage. I mean, it's gorgeous, and that's a thing that it's such a big selling point. When people go into that garage, they're like, holy cow, this is amazing. And after seeing that, now I'm looking at the stuff myself. I only have a 1-car garage, but it's really deep, so I can put the cabinets and everything else in. The epoxy floor is very cool, and just making it so clean and crisp. Like they drywalled it. It's protected from the elements, so it's not going to get freezing cold in there. They've got everything hanging perfectly. Very cool amenity.
Yeah, and every now and then in this area, we'll come across a listing that has the car lift. So whether it's you park one car under here, it goes up, then park another car, or what I almost like better is when it rises from underneath the ground. You park the car, and then it goes back underground. You park a car on top.
Very cool. There's actually a house in Lion Village, you probably know about it, that has multiple car garage underneath and lifts like that. It's never been for sale, but I've heard about it and kind of walked around there.
You've heard through the grapevines.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. I need to add to my car collection. I just have 1 car, but
one nice one though.
One nice one. But yeah, I think that's a really cool amenity. Okay, let's move on to the third story. This comes to us from Realtor.com, and I definitely want to be careful because it's about hurricanes and lives are lost and properties damaged. And the article's entitled "More Storms Like Ida Will Probably Come, Upending Real Estate Markets." And the first word that comes to mind is devastating. I'm thinking of Ida, I'm thinking of Sandy, I'm thinking of Katrina, Andrew. The list goes on, and what the article is talking about is, all right, what are the risks involved? How is real estate, aging through this climate change process? And the reality of climate change, because they interview some scientists, like climate scientist here, director of shorelines there. It doesn't really matter, what your beliefs are on, effects of climate change. The reality is that the climate is changing. Doesn't matter why it's changing. Those factors don't matter. But water levels are increasing, and storms are strong. They're very strong. I'm not about to say that one storm is stronger than the other. That's for an expert to say, but they appear to be very strong. So hopefully we don't have any disagreements about just weather being a destroying factor of real estate. Mm-hmm. But what we want to get into is that homes and communities are at risk. So, what can we do, or what should we be doing to protect, to inform? Because, people's livelihoods, and it's not just hurricanes, it's not just, derechios or whatnot. it's tornadoes. You have Tornado Alley, and the thing about tornadoes is you have Tornado Alley, so you pretty much know. But with hurricanes and flooding especially, the article says that flooding can happen by the coastline. It could also happen on top of a mountain. Like, it can happen anywhere, Shawn. So in terms of, moving forward and evaluating the risks, I mean, as a homeowner, what are your thoughts on flooding and storms, and, what should be done about this?
Yeah, what I'll say is storms have always happened, but they're happening with a little more intensity, and they're hitting different areas, right? Areas that we didn't think were going to be hit by something are being hit. Flooding is hitting areas that we didn't think there were going to be flooding. And the first thing I want to say is insurance, right? Insurance is huge, but flood insurance is usually not included in your insurance policy, along with earthquake insurance and things like that. So I think the main thing to tell people about is, and I'm no insurance expert, but make sure you look at your policy and see if you do have a flood insurance policy. If you don't, and you're in fear of this, it might be worth paying the extra little bit of money to cover you for that. I know that if you're in a floodplain or a current floodplain, that insurance can be pretty hefty. And as we get into the coastal areas, I always dream about living at the beach, but there's a reality about living at the beach, and that is insurance costs. And certain areas are going to have huge insurance costs. So you have to be, cognizant of those costs, and if those costs are even going to protect you when there is a hurricane, because there are clauses in these contracts, and so you could be still, even if you're paying these insurances, you could be left holding nothing.
The article says that about 30% of homes in these high-risk areas have flood insurance, a very low number. Nationally, flood insurance costs around $700 a year, although that varies considerably depending on the location. So, Shawn, the question is, what will change in wake of Hurricane Ida? And Bob Hunter, Director of Insurance at the Consumer Federation of America, says things didn't change after Katrina or Andrew, so we're probably going to see history repeating itself here.
Yeah, there has to be structural changes. I think what we've seen with the learning about New Orleans is the levees, right? So the levees broke, and that's what caused that huge catastrophe years ago. Now they have built those levees, and that was the scary thing about that storm coming into that same area is, are these levees going to hold? And they did, thankfully. Something that you want to think about in maybe your city is the age of that city and whether the pipes can withstand the amount of rain that they're getting. So I know in Arlington, there's a lot of Arlington basements that flood. Thankfully, I'm kind of on a hill, but I hear about my neighbors flooding. Alexandria, huge flooding down in like Delray and Old Town. Old Town has always been flooded, that Old Town front right on Union Street, but now we're seeing it all across. And, structurally something has to be done with these old pipes because they just can't handle the amount of water anymore.
To give you an idea on property damage, Shawn, these numbers just are startling. The damage in Louisiana, Alabama, and Mississippi are expected to be between 27 and 40 billion with a B, $1 billion loss of residential and commercial property. So just think about how many homes that is, and the conversation should be more than just don't buy property below sea level. Obviously you're taking on a lot of risks there, but like you said, with the levees and other infrastructure changes, there should be ways to do this. And the article does go on to say what happened after Katrina is that those homes lost a significant amount of their value, basically a third. So homes that were selling for $150,000 ended up selling for $50,000. Developer, investor would come in and fix and flip them and then basically resell them for $150,000. So I guess for those that didn't see total property loss, but maybe did see that significant flooding, we saw about 1/3 property loss.
That's crazy. Well, another thing to think about with all of these properties going through catastrophic problems and, having to rebuild, we're already seeing a lag in construction builds and materials. Think about how much longer it takes for you to get your appliances right now, or how much, the price of wood has come down, but how expensive it was, and why was it expensive? Because there was high demand and there wasn't any supply. So this is now going to be affecting these people when they go try to rebuild because there just isn't the supply. And so this could take a long time, and I feel bad for these people because where do they go? Where do you go? You have to move out of the city. You have to move out of the whole area, basically, because everybody's going to be looking for housing to rent or move to for a short term or maybe longer term than they expected.
Yeah, that's a difficult cycle, especially if you've been through Katrina, Sandy, and now Ida. I'm not sure if Sandy hit Louisiana. Either way, I mean, what I want to leave you with is, one, some of these like 100-year flood maps are woefully inadequate, and the climate changes so rapidly that it's really hard to, the article says if you're going off of last year's storm, you're already behind.
Yeah, that's right.
So
And what I'll say about the 100-year flood, it's not actually like, oh, it happens every 100 years. It's a 1% chance of that flooding, basically. Keep that in mind, all right? We have a 1%
You learned
chance
that from
of
continuing education.
Hey, I learned something in
works.
continuing education last week. I was trying to get that done by the end of the month, but yeah, it's true. I mean, you always think 100-year flood. I never really thought of it that way, but it's actually 1%.
The last bit that I wanted to share that was in the article is, and it's a good food for thought, is something that doesn't concern you right now may concern you in 20 or 30 years, whether that's a small stream in your backyard or whether you're buying a new construction property in a paved development that used to be wetlands or used to be near the waters. So, these are real issues, and we're starting to see whether it's the Sunrise condo collapse or flooding. We're starting to see some major issues in real estate that maybe you want to think twice about the wetland that you're going to buy on or the coastal property that you're going to buy.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into real estate that you wouldn't think. Thankfully, we don't have a ton of those problems, but coastal areas, if you're thinking about buying that property at the beach, which I always dream about, make sure you do your research on everything because, it can look all bright and sunny, but sometimes it can end in bad things.
I'm probably still very interested in purchasing on the coast.
Me too.
Roll the dice.
Yeah, I'll probably roll the dice.
It's probably not going to be the Gulf Coast, and it's probably not going to be New Orleans.
Yeah.
You just see this area. It's sad. They just get ravished by storms every 5 years, every 10 years.
And what I've heard is, and I don't know if this is true or not, but the frequency of the storms is kind of pulling back a little bit, but the intensity of the storms is going up. And so we're seeing these category 4s hit, which are super intense storms, and they're just going to blow everything apart.
All right, guys, that just about does it for us. Thank you so much for watching. If you made it this far, be sure to hit the thumbs up button, subscribe if you haven't already, and until next time, we'll see you then.
Take care.